political bodies exist to secure responsible government and to execute the will of the people. From these great tasks, both of the old bodies have turned aside. Instead of instruments to promote the general welfare, they have become the tools of corrupt interests which use them impartially to serve their selfish purposes. Behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. To destroy this invisible government, to dissolve the unholy alliance between corrupt business and corrupt politics, is the first task of the statesmanship of the day.
We had to struggle with the old enemies of peace, business and financial monopoly, speculation, reckless banking, class antagonism, sectionalism, war profiteering. They had begun to consider the government of the United States as a mere appendage to their own affairs. And we know now that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob.
You know, I think many people have the mistaken impression that Congress regulates Wall Street. In truth, that's not the case. The real truth is that Wall Street regulates the Congress.
The reason is evident. These men, the big bosses of the political field, the beneficiaries of privilege in the field of industry, the men who represent that sinister alliance between crooked politics and crooked business, which has done more than anything else for the corruption of American life, are united as one man against the genuine rule of the people themselves.
Never before in all our history have these forces been so united against one candidate as they stand today. They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
United, there is little we cannot do in a host of cooperative ventures. Divided, there is little we can do, for we dare not meet a powerful challenge at odds and split asunder.
It's all over this country. You know, a lot of bright, decent, good people. And they're saying, you know what? The situation is hopeless. You can't beat the Koch brothers. You can't beat the billionaires. You can't win. I'm giving up. That is exactly what they want us to believe. And I beg of you, do not enter that world of despair. We can win this fight if we stand together.
All those who face this challenge of educating our children, finding work for our older people, finding security for those who have retired, all who are committed to this great effort of moving this country forward, come and give us your help.
Because at the end of the day, whether you're concerned about jobs or wages or health care or education or climate change, we are not going to go where we have to go so long as a handful of billionaires are capable of purchasing the United States government.
It is necessary that laws should be passed to prohibit the use of corporate funds directly or indirectly for political purposes. It is still more necessary that such laws should be thoroughly enforced.
We need real campaign finance reform.
If a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich.
So now the great special interests too often control and corrupt the men and methods of government for their own profit. For every special interest is entitled to justice, but not one is entitled to a vote in Congress, to a voice on the bench, or to representation in any public office.
Because the business of government is the business of the people, and the people are right here. For the great enemy of the truth is very often not the lie, deliberate, contrived, and dishonest, but the myth, persistent, persuasive, and unrealistic. Too often we hold fast to the cliches of our forebears. We subject all facts to a prefabricated set of interpretations. We enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought.
Because what goes on in this country, primarily through the television and through the media, is that over and over again, all that the President of the United States has to say is that Nicaragua is communist, Nicaragua is Marxist-Leninist, and now the new thing is Nicaragua is terrorist. And if you say it over 100 times, it now becomes truthful. And then suddenly you see the professional politicians getting less and less bold in saying that maybe the president is wrong. Because, you know, appealing to people's hatred and their anger and their desire for revenge is very good politics. The truth of the matter is, it has always worked.
For too long, my country, the wealthiest nation in a continent which is not wealthy, failed to carry out its full responsibilities to its sister republics. We have now accepted that responsibility. In the same way, those who possess wealth and power in poor nations must accept their own responsibilities. They must lead the fight for those basic reforms which alone can preserve the fabric of their societies. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
Naturally, they will do all they can to break down the only real enemies that they have, and the only real champion, the only real and efficient champion of popular rights and of economic, social, and industrial justice.
No man can be a good citizen unless he has a wage more than sufficient to cover the bare cost of living, and hours of labor short enough so after his day's work is done, he will have time and energy to bear his share in the management of the community, to help in carrying the general load. We keep countless men from being good citizens by the conditions of life by which we surround them.
If you want to get tough on crime, let's deal with the causes of crime. Let's demand that every man, woman, and child in this country have a decent opportunity and a decent standard of living.
I remember one day being asked to step out into the hall, and up the corridor came four distinguished-looking men with straw hats on and canes. They told me they had just flown in from a state in their private plane, and they wanted me to know that if we passed a bill providing for time and a half for service station attendants, who were then working about 55 to 60 hours at straight time, it would sap their self-reliance. The fact of the matter is, what saps anyone's self-reliance is working 60 hours at straight time, or working at 85 or 95 or $1 an hour.
Today, Mr. President, the United States has more wealth and income inequality than any other major industrialized country on earth. The top 0.1% now owns 22% of all the wealth in this country, while the bottom 90% owns 22.8%. In other words, the top 0.1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%, and the trend is toward more and more wealth and income inequality.
The present condition of living cannot be accepted as satisfactory. There are too many who do not prosper enough, and of the few who prosper greatly, there are certainly some whose prosperity does not mean welfare for the country. Rational progressives, no matter how radical, are well aware that nothing the government can do will make some men prosper, and we heartily approve the prosperity, no matter how great, of any man if it comes because of his rendering service to the community. Our aim is to control business, not to strangle it, and above all, not to continue the policy of make-believe strangle towards big concerns that do evil, and constant menace toward both big and little concerns that do well. Our aim is to promote prosperity and then to see that prosperity is passed around, that there is a proper division of prosperity.
Well, think back in American history. You know, Teddy Roosevelt did it. What Teddy Roosevelt said is, these guys were too big. We got to break them up. Right now, you have 6 financial institutions that have assets equivalent to 2/3 of the GDP of the United States, over $9 trillion, 6 banks. In my view, and I think in most people's views, that's too big.
At many stages in the advance of humanity, This conflict between the men who possess more than they have earned and the men who have earned more than they possess is the central condition of progress. In our day, it appears as the struggle of freemen to gain and hold the right of self-government as against the special interests, who twist the methods of free government into machinery for defeating the popular will.
The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little.
Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children.
You know, we live in a world today, and it really is depressing to think about it. We live in a world today where there are several 100 million people starving to death. They're starving to death right now. We live in a world where my guess is that between all the superpowers and the other nations of the world, close to $1 trillion are being spent every single year on weapons, on more and more nuclear bombs, on the most sophisticated nerve gases which can wipe people out and paralyze them. And yet, with all the brilliance and all the fine technology and all the robots and the great medical research that they do up there in the hospital and all the other hospitals, civilization hasn't advanced one bloody iota for the last thousands of years. All that these people can do is still say to each other, we're strong, you're weak, you do it our way, or we're going to kill you. A very profound, civilized remark.
As one who has witnessed the horror and the lingering sadness of war, as one who knows that another war could utterly destroy this civilization, which has been so slowly and painfully built over thousands of years, I wish I could say tonight that a lasting peace is in sight.
The United States, as the world knows, will never start a war. We do not want a war. We do not now expect a war. This generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression.
I understand that sometimes you do have to go to war. But I think war is the very, very, very last option.
Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man, and man can be as big as he wants. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Man's reason and spirit have often solved the seemingly unsolvable, and we believe they can do it again.
The problems we face did not come down from the heavens. They are made by bad human decisions. And good human decisions can change them.
The fact of the matter is that what we are now talking about doing, most of the countries of Europe did years ago. We are behind every country pretty nearly in Europe in this matter of medical care for our citizens.
That we need to join the rest of the industrialized world. We are the only major country on Earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a right. And yet we end up spending much more than they do.
This cooperation between an alert and progressive citizen and a progressive government is what has made this country great. And we shall continue as long as we have the opportunity to do so.